ABC 10 News starts now with breaking news.
High school and youth sports in San Diego County can return immediately under certain guidelines. Good evening. I'm Kimberly Hunt.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Our ABC 10 News reporter Anthony Pura has details on the major ruling that came down in just the last 2 hours.
The court order is only 2 pages long. The judge ruling to allow high school and youth sports to continue. It stems from a lawsuit from 2 San Diego area high school athletes against the county and state following the restrictions on sports due to COVID-19. The judge says the athletes can resume play as long as they follow the same protocols and guidelines as collegiate and professional athletes. The judge goes on to say he was not persuaded by the counter arguments that college and professional athletes were at lower risk from the virus. Another hearing is scheduled to take place March 5th. Anthony Pura, ABC 10 News.
The ruling goes beyond what Governor Newsom announced this morning involving youth sports. The governor said that outdoor youth sports can resume in California starting February 26th under conditions outlined by the California Department of Public Health. To qualify, counties in other parts of the state must have a COVID-19 adjusted daily case rate at or below 14 per 100,000. San Diego sits at 22. So if it wasn't for today's ruling, we would not have qualified yet.
The Petco Park Vaccine Superstation is closed again because of a supply shortage, and now the governor is sharing what the next few weeks will look like for California's allotment. As ABC 10 News reporter Leah Pizzetti explains, the situation is expected to get a lot better.
The only constraint now is manufactured supply.
Friday, Governor Gavin Newsom saying supply of the vaccine is the current roadblock, which they hope to overcome soon. He tweeted California's forecast for allotment through the next 3 weeks, saying, quote, modest increases every week, good news, and we're ready for more when they have it. While Sharp, Chula Vista, and Grossmont have open Pfizer appointments this weekend, places like Petco Park have none and are paused.
Certainly there is a lot more demand than there is supply.
Dr. Christian Ramers with Family Health Centers of San Diego says the delays this weekend are due to major weather throughout the country, but he says these state predictions should be on track.
I think the projections are going to get a little bit more accurate. It's been a big complaint of vaccinators like us and like people running the larger sites that it's very hard to plan when we just don't have a good expectation of what's going to come.
San Diego County is still waiting on more than 50,000 missed doses, which are expected by the end of next week. The governor also announcing that 10% of vaccines will be set aside for teachers.
Beginning with a baseline of 75,000 doses every single week that will be made available and set aside for those educators and childcare workers that are supporting our efforts to get our kids back into in-person instruction.
All of this coming the same day Pfizer submitted findings to the FDA, saying the ultra-cold freezers may not be necessary and 1 dose may be good enough. But for now, Dr. Ramers says people should stick to the 21 or 28-day second dose with some wiggle room up to 42 days as research continues on single-dose effectiveness.
You know, the science evolves and it changes and there's more information out there.
Leah Pizzetti, ABC 10 News.
The county said late today it expects to get the delayed vaccine doses by the end of next week. In the meantime, Sharp says it has a lot of Pfizer doses available to San Diegans this weekend. As of noon, 3,000 appointments were available at both the Chula Vista and Grossmont super sites for tomorrow and Sunday. Anyone eligible can make an appointment on the county's website.
And the county announced 812 new COVID cases today, while our test positivity rate ticked up to 5%. 34 more San Diegans have lost their lives to coronavirus, bringing that total now to more than 3,100. You can stay on top of any new developments with coronavirus by downloading the 10 News app. A free version is available in the App Store.
Former NFL player Kellen Winslow Jr. will get a 14-year sentence after changing his guilty plea today. Winslow withdrew his original plea and pled guilty to a lesser charge of assault with attempt to commit rape. He was looking at 12 to 18 years in prison. Now both sides are agreeing to a 14-year sentence. Winslow, whose father was a star with the charges, was accused of raping and exposing himself to 5 women. And a major shift in immigration policy kicked off today right here in San Ysidro. 25 migrants previously forced to wait in Mexico for their asylum cases. They were allowed across the border. But as our Laura Acevedo reports, critics are calling this move a mistake.
The policy ends 2 years of the Trump administration's Remain in Mexico policy that was put in place to make migrants wait for their asylum court hearing in Mexico out of fear that if they were let into the country, they would not show up for their day in court. Early this morning, 25 migrants entered the U.S. at the San Ysidro port of entry, marking the first change of Biden's immigration policy.
The sentiment over the last 2 years that the program's been in effect has been really one of desperation.
The 25 migrants accepted into the country today are temporarily staying in a San Diego hotel and not in a shelter because of the pandemic, receiving shelter services, legal support, and other services from the San Diego Rapid Response Network Migrant Shelter Services. This man from Honduras saying he's been waiting for 2 years in Mexico with his family for their asylum hearing. All of the immigrants are processed and tested for COVID-19 before they're accepted into the U.S. The Biden administration plans on accepting 25 people every day from the MPP program, Monday through Friday.
Now there is a lot of hope. People feel like they are coming to the end of a long, dark night. We as advocates remain cautious.
Late Friday, Congressman Darrell Issa reacting to the news, calling the policy reversal, quote, one of the most reckless and ill-conceived actions in recent history, saying it is fair to ask those seeking admittance into the U.S. to wait in line, calling it both a domestic disaster and foreign policy failure. The next group of migrants will be processed and allowed into the country on Monday. In San Ysidro, Laura Acevedo, ABC 10 News.
The cause of a deadly plane crash at the Port of Los Angeles remains under investigation tonight. A small plane crashed into a big rig at a cargo terminal at the port around noon today. The pilot was killed. The truck driver was injured. He was taken to the hospital in serious condition. The plane was a Piper PA-32 registered to a Huntington Beach resident. And here at home, a close call on the 5. A driver in a black SUV slammed into a tow truck on 5 South near Old Town Avenue. The tow truck driver and the 3 people that he was assisting had to dive out of the way. One even tumbled down an embankment. Fortunately, everyone was okay. The tow truck driver says this happens all too often.
We have a higher percentage death than CHP, 60%. So everybody does their part here.
The SUV driver was suspected of being under the influence.
We have sad new details about the death of former Charger Vincent Jackson. The medical examiner now says that Jackson may have been dead for up to 3 days before he was discovered. Deputies found his body Monday in a Tampa area hotel room where he'd been living for several weeks. They say that cleaning staff saw Jackson hunched over, but they thought he was sleeping. His death is under investigation. Jackson's family is donating his brain for CTE research. And the Sheriff's Department is looking into a group of livestock found dead under suspicious circumstances in Alpine. The goats, lambs, and a ram, they were discovered this morning at a private ranch on Putz Valley Road. Investigators will only say the cause of death is suspicious. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers.
A huge jump today in local gas prices. Regular rose 2.5 cents to $3.57 a gallon. That's the highest we've seen since January 28th of last year. An Auto Club spokesman says the ice storms that shut down refinery production in Texas are not the culprit. Instead, Jeffrey Spring says there are reports of local refineries tightening the supply, which means we will likely see prices continue to rise.
Accusations of racism over a proposal to close a public pool in Oceanside. The City Council is considering closing the Brook Street pool. Now, the money saved could be put towards operating the new El Corazon Aquatic Center, which is miles away from Brook Street in a more affluent neighborhood.
What they are proposing to close the Brook Street pool is nothing short of institutional racism. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, the effect is still the same.
And this is far from over. This week, staff on the Parks and Rec Commission reportedly said that there was money in the budget to operate both pools. The council will discuss the matter at next Wednesday's meeting.